Good morning, Namibia, and welcome to My Zone Online School. I'm Mr. Sean Diergaard, and we have our friend Chanel in class with us today. Now, before we can start with today's lesson, we should first sanitize. Chanel, let's take our sanitizer, spray it on our hands, rub it in nicely, rub it in through the fingers, and then we also check for social distance. At least 1.5 meters away, we have our social distance. And now we can start with today's topic. And today's topic is addition and subtraction. Okay, class, let's turn our books to page 10. I hope we've got our books in front of us. Chanel, let's turn our book to page 10. And we can start with today's lesson, addition. Now let's read. Before we can start adding numbers together, we first need to learn some terminologies, which tells us when to add numbers. Now, terminologies are words that tells us when we should add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Now, let's have a look at addition terminologies. Add, altogether, sum of, plus, put together. And these are just a few of the terminologies that tells us when we should do an addition sum. Now let's start. We get different types of addition methods. Our first type is our pen and paper mode. Now pen and paper mode are the methods where we write numbers underneath each other. And here we should always make sure numbers are correctly under each other before we can add. Now, pen and paper mode is how they taught us to write numbers in grade 3, grade 4. Now, let's see. How do we do pen and paper mode? Here, let's go to remember. When we add numbers, we start from the units. This is now after we've written down our numbers neatly underneath each other. If the numbers are added together in a specific place value and ends up with a number more than 10, then you write the unit and the 10 is carried over to the next number. That carried over number is then added together with the other numbers. Now let's do a few examples to see what we've just read. Example, 450 plus 23 plus 1,560. Now we have to add these three numbers together. We write 450, we write the 23, and we write 1,560. So we wrote it neatly underneath each other. Units under units, tens under tens, hundreds under hundreds, and thousands under thousands. Now let's add. 3 plus 0 is 3, plus another 0 equals 3. Then 5 plus 2 equals 7, plus 6 equals 13. Now we write down the 3 and we carry the 1 over to the 4. Then we say 4 plus 5 equals 9, plus the 1 that was carried over. And that equals to 10. Then we carry 1 over to the other one, to the thousands. And that 1 plus the 1 that was carried over, that is equal to 2. So our answer is 2,033. Let's try another example. 55 plus 4,726. plus 14,500. We need to write our numbers neatly underneath each other. 55 plus 4,726 plus 14,500. We make sure our numbers are neatly written underneath each other. Units under units, tens under tens, 100 under hundreds, thousands under thousands, and 10,000s under 10,000s. Now let's add. 5 plus 6, that is equal to 11, plus 0, it's still equal to 11. We write down the 1 and we carry the other one over. Then 5 plus 2 equals 7, plus 0 equals 7, plus the 1 that we needed to carry over, and that is equal to 8. Now we add the hundreds. 7 plus 5 equals 12. We write down the 2 and we carry the 1 over. Now we add our thousands. 4 plus 4 equals 8, plus the 1 that was carried over, and that is equal to 9. And then we add our 10,000s. There's nothing carried over, and we only got 1 10,000, and 1 plus nothing equals 1, and our answer is equal to 19,281. So that is pen and paper mode. So the most important thing here is, guys, make sure your numbers are written correctly underneath each other. Now we continue on to page 11 with another way of adding. And here we have commutative property of addition. Now let's see, what is commutative property of addition? In commutative property of addition, the order of the numbers should be changed first, and then only the numbers is added together. Let's read that sentence again. In commutative property of addition, the order of the numbers should be first changed, and then only the numbers can be added together. Now let's go to an example. 360 plus 25. Here we've got only 2 numbers to add. Now when we apply commutative property, we first need to change the order of the numbers. And how do we change the order of the numbers? Here we write the 25 first, plus the 360. After we have changed the order, now we add it together. But as you see, we did not write it underneath each other, so we will just add it next to each other. Then we say 5 plus 0 equals 5. I write on the 5. 2 plus 6 equals 8. I write on the 8. And then 3 plus nothing equals 3. And 25 plus 360 equals 385. Guys, let's try another example. 1,250 plus 14,700. Let's read. Remember, first switch the order of the 2 numbers. So we cannot add it yet. We first need to switch the order. Now let's switch the order. Equals. Now we write 14,700 first, plus 1,250. And now we add it together. And if I add 14,700 plus 1,250 together, my answer is 15,950. So guys, remember in commutative property, all we do here is we switch the order of the numbers, and then only we can add our numbers together. Now let's go over to the third way of addition, associative property of addition. Now let's read, what should we do in associative property of addition? In associative property of addition, we add numbers together to form either a multiple of 10, 100, or 1,000. And then we add it to the rest of the numbers. Let's read again. In associative property of addition, we add numbers together to form either a multiple of 10, 100, or 1,000. and then we add it to the rest of the numbers. Now let's go over to our examples in our book. Example 1, 5 plus 328 plus 15. Now we have to group numbers together. Now what we do here is we try to group numbers together to either give us a number which is a multiple of 10 or 100 or 1,000. So here I will group the 5 and the 15 together. And as you see in our example, we put 5 and 15 in brackets plus 328. 5 plus 15, if I add it together, that gives me 20, and 20 is a multiple of 10. And then we say 20 plus 328, and when I add it together, that will give me 348. So now we want to try another example again. Chanel says yes. So let's try another example. 70 plus 2,650 plus 130. So we have to find numbers which we can group together to either give us a multiple of 10, 100 or 1,000. So we go back to our example and we see, let's group 70 with 130. We put 70 and 130 in brackets plus 2,650. If I add 70 with 130, that will give me 200, and 200 is a multiple of 100 plus the 2,650. And now we add 200 plus 2,650 together, and that will give me 2,850. So that is associative property of addition. Now let's recap before we continue. Going back to pen and paper mode, remember pen and paper mode is where we write our numbers neatly underneath each other, units under units, tens under tens, hundreds under hundreds, thousands under thousands, and then we add it together. Then we have commutative property. In commutative property, we first switch the order of the numbers, and then we add it together. And then in associative property, here we group numbers together to find multiples of either 10, 100, or 1,000. And there we find the numbers, we put it in brackets, and then after we found our multiples of 10, 100, or 1,000, and then we add it to the rest of the numbers. So that is the 3 ways of adding numbers. Okay, class, that was addition, and now we go over to subtraction. Let's turn our books to page 12, and then we go through subtraction. Now here there's also a few terminologies. Now remember we said terminologies are words that tells us when we should subtract. Now let's go through our terminologies. Minus, I think we all know minus. Subtract, I think we all know subtract. Take away, difference, and less than. Now these are just a few of the terminologies that tells us when to subtract numbers from each other. There are plenty more. So these are just a few. Now let's start. In a subtraction sum, there is always a big number known as the munient, a small number known as the trachient, and the answer is known as the difference. Please remember these 3 names: the big number, the small number, and what we call the answer of a subtraction sum. Now, when it comes to a subtraction sum, there is one basic rule. Remember, the big number is always written at the top and the small number is always written at the bottom. So if we do a subtraction sum, this is just a clue. If we do a subtraction sum and a number is too small to be subtracted from, then that number borrows from the number next to it. Now let's go through a few examples. 2,575 minus 1,344. The big number is written on top, the 2,575. The small number, 1,344, is written at the bottom. And now we minus the two numbers from each other. Then we say 5 minus 4 equals 1. 7 minus 4 equals 3. 5 minus 3 equals 2. And 2 minus 1 equals 1. And that is equal to 1,231. Let's try another example. 5,175 minus 4,355. We write our big number on top, 5,175. We write the small number at the bottom, 4,355. And now we minus it from each other. 5 minus 5 is equal to 0. 7 minus 5 is equal to 2. 1 minus 3. Now here we see we cannot subtract it. So what should we do? Yes, now the 1 goes over to the 5. And the 1 says to the 5, please borrow me, because I am too small for the 3 to be subtracted. So the 5 will borrow the 1. And now the 5 will change into a 4. Now the 5 borrowed the 1. Now that 1, when it's carried over to the 1, it becomes a 10. And that 10 plus the 1 now becomes 11. And now we say 11 minus 3 is equal to 7. And 4 minus 4 is equal to 0. So going back to that example, remember when a number is too small, it needs to borrow. Now when it borrows 1 from its partner, and that 1 is carried over, it is not a 1 that is carried over, but it is a 10. And then you add that 10 with the small number. And then you take that number and then you minus the next number from it. So that is our subtraction part. Guys, I hope you understood subtraction part. And now we can go over to page 13. On page 13, there's a really nice activity for you guys to do. Now let's go through the activity. Use pen and paper mode to add the following numbers. 257 plus 35 plus 1,957, 1.2, 67 plus 5,925 plus 56,714. So here we apply pen and paper mode. Number 2, use commutative property of addition. 75 plus 850 and 2.2, 640 plus 600. Remember, apply commutative property here, guys. Number 3, use associative property of addition. 7 plus 875 plus 13. 3.2, 540 plus 1,470 plus 60. Here we apply associative property. And 4.1, these two nice minus sums. 5,794 minus 2,481. And 4.2, 9,065 minus 8,744. So guys, do this activity. I really hope that you will enjoy it. And then on the last page of our book, here you will find our memo. So this brings us to the end of our class. Okay guys, that brings us to the end of our class. I really hope you also enjoyed our class today. Chanel, did you enjoy our class today? Did you learn a lot today? Yes. Now before we say goodbye, let's first sanitize again. We spray on our hands. We rub it in nicely, guys. We check for social distance. Do not forget social distance. Wherever you are, 1.5 meters away. Always wear your mask if you travel outside of the house. And guys, we see each other again soon. A blessed week to you. Goodbye.
What is social distancing? Hi everyone, I am Zoshi, and I am back. It literally just means that you need to stay home all the time and keep away from crowded places. And remember to keep your distance from your friends too. Everybody stay safe. Yay! Till next time. Bye!
Humanitarian crises are all too familiar to television viewers. Civil wars that cause huge movements of refugees, worldwide pandemics, and natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. This is the way most of us are used to seeing these heart-wrenching events, on a screen in front of us, watching passively. But what if you could step into the frame and actually feel what it's like for the individuals on the ground?
People come out of it feeling enlightened and often moved and often ready to take action. A lot of people automatically say, well, what can I do? How can I get involved?
Garbo Aurora is leading a team at the United Nations who are using cutting-edge technology to raise awareness, empathy, and funds both to respond to humanitarian crises and to bolster support for a new set of sustainable development goals around the globe.
Virtual reality is the ability to really take part in a story that usually you're only a passive spectator on. And you actually get this sensation of feeling like you're being there.
By using multiple cameras that can record in all directions and software that can stitch the images together, virtual reality creates an experience that enables the viewer to see a movie from every angle, above, below, and behind.
It's exciting for the UN, to be involved in some of those early experiments of how we're trying to tell stories make these films and work with some of the most cutting-edge people in the industry on it.
So the UN reached out to us and connected, and we realized that there was a great opportunity here to tell some very important stories and to tell them in a way that we thought would be totally new and highly impactful. The way that I define virtual reality at this point in time is basically the hacking of your senses to convince you that you're somewhere other than where you are. Often, I think of it as a sense of vulnerability. So one of the things we've realized in some of our stories is you have a heightened sense of empathy and a heightened sense of connection as a result of that vulnerability.
That heightened sense of connection and empathy was exactly what Gabo Aurora was looking to create at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Not only to inspire leaders to take action, but also to influence donors to increase funding for disaster response efforts.
I'd started experimenting with using innovative ways of advocacy, and I started talking to a lot of different partners and people. What could we do that would be incredible? And someone said, you know, I just came from a meeting at Samsung, and, you know, with some of these other virtual reality headsets, wouldn't it be amazing if you got all of those elite people who could actually go to a refugee camp, or they could go to an Ebola clinic? I just really felt it would get our issues highlighted.
In addition to the screenings at Davos, virtual reality portals have been set up to view the films at high-level political forums around the world. The virtual reality film on display was Clouds Over Sidra.
Clouds Over Sidra is a short film in virtual reality about a girl named Sidra who lives in Zaatari camp, which is a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. And it is a story about a young girl who is giving you a tour of the camp, of what it's like, what her life is like. When the film debuted in Davos, it was a sensation to everyone we showed it to. They come out of it very deeply moved. I'd say half the people who watch Clouds Over Sidra cry. And then we cut a version for UNICEF, where it's face-to-face fundraisers. The way they do that is usually someone with a clipboard on the street in Europe or in different countries. So they thought, well, what if we got people to experience virtual reality on the street?
Quite sad. They don't have the good environment to stay. We try our best to help them.
Early reporting from UNICEF has shown that when using virtual reality, they've doubled the effectiveness of their fundraising efforts. This report was produced by Ben Lybrand for the United Nations.
Good afternoon. My name is Sukunan Roma, and I'm a medical intern at the Humanitarian State Hospital. We, as individuals, you and I, have the opportunity to take control and fight this by staying home, by staying safe, and by staying informed. I appeal to the more fortunate that we lend a helping hand to the more vulnerable and the disadvantaged, especially those in our informal settlements. We should stand together, listen to what we are being told, and together as a country we can get through this.